So, of all the Jewish holidays, and there are a lot, Purim has got to be the most fun. Purim is kind of like Jewish Mardi Gras or Carnival. Every year, everyone dresses up in awesome costumes and they retell this story, the story of Esther saving her people. You always cheer loudly when Esther or Mordecai is mentioned. Hey. And then you get to boo even louder when they say Haman's name. Yeah, you guys get it. You get to eat delicious little triangular biscuits that look like Haman's hat, because his hat was very ugly. And he failed to kill your people, and so you get to make fun of his ugly little hat thousands of years later. And of course, Purim is the only Jewish holiday where it is required by the Jewish mitzvot, the Jewish good deeds, the commandments, that you get smashed. The 4th century Rabbi Rava wrote in the Talmud, which is like a commentary on the Jewish scripture, he wrote that a person is obligated to become so drunk with wine on Purim that he doesn't know how to distinguish between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordecai. That's pretty wasted. So Esther is this work of historical fiction, and it's set in Persia, and it follows the Jews who have been exiled there after the fall of the temple. And its primary reason for existing as a scroll in the Hebrew scriptures is to give the reasoning behind why Jews celebrate the festival of Purim, the only Jewish holiday that is not mentioned in the Torah, those 5 books of law. But, as scholar Adele Berlin says, it also exists to make us laugh. Purim is one hell of a party to retell one hell of a drama. And as we heard last week from Nat, Esther is a court drama. It's got all of the classic characters. There's heroes and heroines, there's a bumbling idiot king and a scheming advisor. But there's one other thing that really fascinates me about the scroll of Esther. And it's that nowhere in this melodrama tale of lust and greed and loyalty and banquets do we hear about God. Esther is one of only 2 books in the entire Bible where God is not mentioned, not even once. I don't know about you guys. Recently I have this feeling that I'm living in a nightmare soap opera. I keep opening the news or Facebook and it feels like it's season 13 and the writers have run out of ideas and they're just throwing the most insane, awful things they can, hoping the show gets cancelled soon. I don't have to look very far to see the similarities between the melodrama world of Esther and the world I'm living in either the absurdities or the violence. Sex, money, military might are being used as weapons to dehumanize. Decisions are being made on a whim of a drunken man with a bruised ego, egged on by people who would have that power for themselves. Systems that aren't built to undo violence but can only respond in kind. Like in the Scroll of Esther, I sometimes find it hard to tell where God is in all the drama and chaos. But Esther invites us to see God's presence, to read between the lines. The story is full of weird lucky chances and coincidences, well-placed overhearing and helpfully timed insomnia. Esther invites us to look carefully and expectantly for God's sovereignty between the lines, to see in the absurdity God working all things together for good. I want us to take a look at 3 of the major characters in this biblical soap opera. And in each of their stories, I want you to pay attention and see how God is working. So, the scroll is named after her. We've got to start with my girl Esther, or her real Hebrew name, Hadassah. The children's Bible that I use in our Sunday school calls Esther a cunning and careful queen. Kind of badass, right? And in Hadassah, I see this truth. God is working through your resistance. God is working through your resistance. Listen in chapter 7. So the king and Haman went to dine with Queen Esther, and as they were drinking wine that second day, the king again asked Queen Esther, "What is your petition?" Then Queen Esther answered, "If I have found favor with you, O king, grant me my life and spare my people." There are no coincidences here. Hadassah is the ultimate inside revolutionary. She has set the table and bought the wine. She has flattered these two men with last night's banquet. Like so many women before and after her, Hadassah knows that she can't resist evil with the force or might available to a powerful man. She must use what is available to her. She is in many ways victimized by the system. A member of an exiled community, orphaned, forced into sexual slavery, and now watching as her people face destruction. But, as my children's Bible says, she is cunning and careful. And Hadassah reminds me that not everywhere in the Bible is cunningness condemned. And to be sure, it's not recommended for everyone. I don't know if hedge fund managers should be developing their cunningness. But for the oppressed and the marginalized, the biblical witness views cunning as a cleverness, as a way of resisting and revolting against the system from the inside. And when I think of what it means to get shrewd or to get cunning from within the system, I think of community organizing. I think of this community and communities like it getting people educated and organized, ready to flatter some egos or appeal to the votes, so that we can get people the things they need, things like housing and safety and their basic rights. God is at work in this resistance. When this church attends a Sydney Alliance assembly ahead of an election, God is at work. When we attend protests wearing t-shirts that communicate to the world that Christians are not on board with genocide, God is at work. And even when these things seem frustrating or boring or like they're not going anywhere, God's hand is at work. God is working through your resistance. Okay, awesome. Great message for luck. Keep on community organizing. God is at work. And yes, definitely, please. But also, I am not always my coolest, wokest community organizing self. Sometimes I'm a real dumbass. And a lot of the time, I do not see myself in a cool, courageous, cunning Queen Esther, but in the insecure, petty, easily swayed King Xerxes. Luckily, God is also working through my stupidity. Throughout Esther, King Xerxes is the epitome of the archetypical fool. He's constantly drunk. He's like flaunting his wealth. He's demanding entertainment. He is a man ruled by his passions. He does not make a single decision himself, the whole book, but he's coddled and manipulated by his advisors, his eunuchs, by Haman, and eventually, for the better, by Esther. Chapter 7, verse 5, King Xerxes asked Queen Esther, "Who is he? Where is the man who would dare to do such a thing?" You can kind of imagine the campy way this gets played for laughs in the Purim play. Bumbling, drunk, clueless, impulsive. And yet, God is working here too. Through the king's insecurity, God brings Esther to the position of queen. Through his downright forgetfulness, and I guess insomnia, God reminds him of Mordecai's service at just the right time. And through what seems like, frankly, a blind trust of whoever happens to be advising him at that moment, Mordecai and Esther are able to pen the edict that allows the Jews to escape genocide. Friends, it's a really good thing for a youth pastor that God works through stupidity. I have had the wonderful opportunity now to lead at 4 of our state youth camps. And I must admit to you, with the help of Dave, I have had plenty of stupid ideas. In fact, most recently, I have to admit to you, I was the activities coordinator this year for camp. And after camp, I got on a Zoom meeting with our synod's lead of church safety. And she said, "So, I wasn't aware there was going to be slime wrestling on tarps. I didn't see that in the risk assessment." Not my finest moment. And yet, through the grace of God, there were no broken bones, and someone else remembered to concussion watch. And the kids had an amazing time, and after they showered and trashed the bathrooms, they even managed to encounter Jesus. So I gotta tell you, friends, it's good news for me that God works through stupidity. Because like Xerxes, I am often insecure. I am commonly driven by petty things. I act on impulse without prayer or fasting. And yet, in God's impossible mercy, He works all things together for my good and for the good of the whole world. But friends, it is not just in clever resistance or hapless stupidity that God's hand is working. Here is a not so controversial reality. I am not a very oppressed person. I live in one of the wealthiest places in the world, in one of the most prosperous times of human history. I possess an unjustly large amount of that prosperity. I am university educated, able-bodied, employed in a job that pays me a living wage. I am a woman, but unlike many women, I can vote. I am protected from discrimination by the law. I am queer, but unlike many queer people, my country allows me to marry, and my church allows me to serve and lead. I'm not saying these things to undermine the very real struggles of people in contemporary Australia. Please hear me clearly, this is not a "you don't have it that bad" sort of thing. But here's an honest truth that I need to recognize. When I constantly put myself in the role of the Bible's oppressed hero, I fail to have the humility to see myself in Haman. Haman is like the cartoonish villain of the Esther story. He's scheming and conniving and grasping for power. He flies into a rage over the smallest bruise to his ego. He's repulsively comfortable reaching for state violence to exterminate anyone he has a grievance with. He is comical in his wickedness. And yet, like Haman, I am also inclined to wickedness. Not in my core, not in that deepest part of me that God has made good. But this part of me that we all know, whatever you want to call it, our fallen nature, our inclination to sin, the part of me that is tempted to power and violence and self-preservation. I am inclined, like Haman, to gossip and to grasp for power and to be upset when people don't consult me. Luckily, God is working even in my wickedness. There is nothing defensible about Haman's actions. They're not secretly subversive. They don't have a second meaning that can be revealed with hermeneutics. They are morally wrong in ancient Persia and now. Doesn't matter if he plotted to kill Mordecai because he was insecure or unguided or misinformed. What he does is wicked. And yet, God works in it. I wonder if this is why 2nd century writer Tertullian writes that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. Because inherently, What it means to be a Christian is to be looking expectantly for God to be acting even amongst evil. And I wonder if this is why the Catholic Mass contains the line, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, my fault, my most grievous fault. Because I need to know that God is working through evil. Not just for when I am strung up on the cross, but for when I drive the nails. I pray I can have the humility to see when I am Haman in the story, and the humility to receive the scandalous grace that God is working through me anyway. Friends, God's hiddenness is not God's absence. In the absurd, in the hardworking, in the unjust, the cunning, the wise, and the bizarre, God is working all things together for the good of you and of the whole universe. Esther invites us to look expectantly for God's action between the lines. To look at the world in all its suffering and injustice, all its bright hope and its downright absurdity, and expect that we will see God acting. God's hiddenness is not God's absence. This is good news. Amen.